we're gonna open up with a greetings, True Blue. I miss you all the time in the openings, but today I'm gonna catch you. Welcome, gang. My name's Ehren. This is Canadian Looney, and we have a great show lined up. A lot of fun things to watch. Going a little bit retro today. Not retro, but changing the opening just for the day, just to mix it up. Good to see everybody. Michelle Ladisseur, greetings. Sylvain Robert, how are you? Captain Kirk, always a pleasure. Mike Malash, you always are the first guy in line. That's always fun to see. So we're jumping into this. Let's get it going.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal police.
And racism, including from the guy who spent the first half of his adult life as a practicing racist, dressing up in hideous racist costumes so many times he can't.
The leader of the opposition knows that to make an accusation directly at the character of a single person is not appropriate.
Mr. Speaker, the leader opposite is showing us exactly what shameful, spineless leadership looks like. He shakes hands with white nationalists and then goes to actively court the support of those members and has the nerve.
Get it together, Greg! Any idea what you're doing?
Order!
IT contracts, even though they admit they do no IT work. $250 million. WTF.
Here, here.
And I say to him, come to my riding, my diverse riding in Durham, and try that on us, where we have Christians and Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, and Jews living together, all people who believe that mothers and fathers matter.
Just want enough to warm it up, son. I don't want to set it on fire. It's very easy to set it on fire.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, and you have a right to defend your house with firearms.
There's no chance, bud.
When I'm Prime Minister, I will keep my promises. Now,
Agency Preparedness, Justin Chan, Director, Counter-Terrorism Policy. From the Privy Council Office, Sean Jorgensen, Director General and Chief Security Officer. From the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Chief Superintendent Jeffrey Bolak, Acting Chief Security Officer, Departmental Security. And from the Treasury Board Secretariat, Adam Hatfield, Executive Director, Policy on Government Security. Thank you very much to our officials for being here. So, colleagues, there were obviously a number of changes and moving pieces over the course of the past couple of days, but I believe we have landed.
Okay, guys, the reason we're putting this video on is because it gets nuts later. Here we go. We've got it just about to the right point. Here is a few minutes of one of my favorites, Michael Cooper, kind of flipping out. He and the chair, Ben Carr, who's a dud. Hey, Mr. Pickles, what's up? Rory, Common Sense, good to see you. Janet Nunn, sorry I missed you in the beginning. Gus Papas, good day. Yeah, we've got a great show lined up. Anyways, back into this. This is Michael Cooper flipping out in committee about a half hour ago.
Again, someone who applies and passes a security clearance does not automatically mean they're granted access to a single document because of that aspect. So I'll leave my comments from there and continue to encourage my colleagues to reject this sub-amendment and amendment. And let's get back to the scope and the level at which Mr. Ruff is dealing with. It is very reasonable. It is very narrowed and target for a specific reason. And I think we could have a very good piece of legislation that does not jeopardize any safeguards that are there. They can use the existing ones that are in place now for the circumstance. I'll leave that for now for my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Duncan. Mr. Cooper, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And while I fully respect your ruling on the scope of the amendment, at least that it is within scope on a technical basis, this really does add a whole new layer to what is a 2-sentence, 1-clause bill. I think it is important that we understand what the purpose and effect of the bill put forward by my colleague, Mr. Ruff, would be, because it seems, with the greatest of respect to some of my colleagues here in this committee, that it has been lost on some members. And it's not to say that concerns about protecting classified information, concerns around national security that they raised are illegitimate. They are legitimate. But they have really nothing to do with the purpose and effect of this bill if it were to come into law. And to that end, I would underscore that this 2-sentence, 1-clause bill would amend the Parliament of Canada Act so that every member of Parliament and senator can apply for a secret level security clearance. Nothing more, nothing less. That's it. It doesn't in any way provide that upon making an application that the member would therefore receive the security clearance. That would be left to the government. The bill doesn't change that. In the event that the member received the secret security clearance, it wouldn't provide that they would be entitled to access any information. That would be left, again, in the control of the government, and there are protocols in place around sharing such information with persons who have a secret security clearance. And information is shared to persons who have such a designation on the basis of a need to know. So the bill doesn't impact that. It simply provides that a member can get their foot in the door with respect to the application process. And the reason there is a need for this bill is because, as it stands, members of Parliament and senators are more or less unable to get their foot in the door unless they already have a security clearance from their prior careers, such as my colleague Mr. Ruff, who has a top secret level security clearance. He has a clearance as a result of his appointment to NSICOP, but prior to that he had such a clearance as a result of his service in the Canadian Armed Forces, and there are other examples of that. But there is something fundamentally wrong, in my opinion, that members of Parliament, 338 people, 338 Canadians elected to represent about 100,000 people that deal with matters of national security, foreign affairs, public safety, national defense, all falling within the purview of what we do as members of Parliament, are somehow unable to even get our foot in the door to apply for not a top secret security clearance, but a secret security clearance. Difference between a top secret and secret security clearance, I mean, there are several distinctions, but one key aspect is a secret security clearance does not disclose sources and methods. But it does provide a member who might have that and might have be able to establish a need to know basis upon why they would like to have access to information, some further background, further understanding, which would actually provide in some of these issues that we have been facing on matters of foreign interference and so on, greater transparency to the member in a classified setting that could perhaps provide clarity and actually address concerns that might be raised where there isn't a basis, but the member might raise it because they can't, information that could help shed light on whatever concern they have, they don't have access to. 250,000 applications have been made in the last 10 years for a secret security clearance. 250,000. And Mr. Ruff, when he appeared to present on his bill, I asked him the question, how many secret security applications out of 250,000 have been turned down? And the number was under 10?
23.
23 out of 250,000. And somehow we have 338 members of Parliament that can't get their foot in the door, but of course ministers have security clearances, their staff have clearances, even interns in ministers' offices have clearances. But I, as a member of Parliament, representing about 125,000 people, can't even get my foot in the door. How does that make sense? It doesn't. And so all Mr. Ruff's bill would do is to say, I can get my foot in the door, and then if I made that decision, I would have really my entire life examined to determine if I was trustworthy and any other concerns or red flags. And if I passed that, then I'd have a clearance. But again, a clearance is nothing more than receiving that accreditation. But I'd still have to establish a need to know, and it would still be within the control of the government to share anything with me. I could have such a clearance and have no information of a secret classified nature revealed to me. Now, you can have a discussion about issues and processes around how the government controls information, how it's shared, but that is, again, not the purpose of this bill. This bill has nothing to do with that. It is about as narrow in scope of a bill as one could draft, hence it being a two-sentence, one-clause bill. And so I would have thought that given how straightforward it is, and I would also add, given that it was in fact a unanimous recommendation of this committee that there be processes in place for members to be able to receive security clearances to better understand national security matters. And given, I think NSCOP has weighed in. This has been raised at the National Inquiry on Foreign Interference. That this bill would have gotten out of committee after one meeting, quite frankly. But we heard, I think there's some members who seem to think it's funny.
Oh, that was something.
Oh, okay. No worries. Well, because I just don't find this very funny. I find it actually just dispiriting that, we have members insulting me. I think that just underscores the tone that we have and why this is so disappointing, because we have someone like Mr. Ruff, who has served his country in the Canadian Armed Forces for 25 years, who has a very good understanding of matters of national security, who has received a security clearance at the highest level and has held that for a number of years, who sits on NSCOP and therefore has a unique perspective as a member of Parliament. And we have certain members who don't have that background, don't have that experience, don't have that knowledge, who didn't even have the courtesy to talk to him, and table drop a bunch of sub-amendments that have nothing to do with his bill.
What do you guys think of Cooper? Like, he's so twitchy today, you can tell he's really wound up. Joe Sofat, what's going on? Scott Campbell, Common Sense. Tommy Gunn, good to see you. Chris Murray. Who else is new in the room? When I miss people, I feel bad. Krypton Mary, what's going on, sister? Good to see you. Jim Bellingham, what's going on, brother? Gus Pappas. Derek Summers, hopefully again, maybe I'm doubling up here. Alan Nielsen, thank you for all your help. That's amazing. Oh, yeah, also, remember to like and subscribe, share, get notified for all these things. We'll get back to Michael Cooper.
Now, I will submit that there's one basis for that, and that is that they don't want this bill to pass. They would rather gut the bill, and it's passing strange for a party like the NDP that has never been in government, hopefully never will be in government, that they're against members of Parliament being able to get their foot in the door to apply for a secret security clearance. I thought the NDP was all about accountability. I guess now under the leadership of sellout Jagmeet Singh.
Chair?
Yeah, point of order from Ms. Matheson.
I'm really sorry that I made the member mad, but maybe he can focus back on the comments that he was going to make about the bill, as opposed to trying to insult in a sideways my leader. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Cooper, I didn't quite catch whatever exchange happened a few moments ago, but nonetheless, if you can keep your remarks, please, to the matter at hand. Thank you.
Under the leadership of sellout Jagmeet Singh, this is a party that...
Mr. Cooper...
You were told once
I have a
and asked once kindly.
Everyone knows Jagmeet Singh is a sellout. And,
okay.
Cooper?
And Mr.
All right.
Chair, going back to the sub-amendment...
Mr. Cooper, I have the floor now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to suspend so that everybody can catch their breath, maybe have some water, maybe a bite to eat, maybe use the washroom, and we'll see where we get when we come back from that suspension.
All right, gang. So that piece is done. That committee didn't come back yet today. So we'll maybe check that out this evening. I saw the Patty Hayju testimony. She's lame, but also it wasn't the best of committees. Like, we might not repost that one. We do have this now, though. There's some new faces in the room, new names. Warhawk, what's going on, man? Did I catch you earlier, James Fahey? Jennifer O, what's going on? Life used to be good. DM9542, how you doing? Tommy Gunn, what's up? JL, how you doing? Again, Hammy Hamster, good afternoon. Welcome. We'll be Francine Forche, how are you today? Again, we've got probably 15 minutes before we cross into question period. We have that right here. We're not going to miss a moment of that. But something maybe you haven't seen yet that we have here to show is this.
First and foremost, when it comes to Florida, our hearts and hers are with people in Florida that are facing a devastating hurricane, which is Hurricane Milton. To all Canadians that are registered with the embassy, every one of you should have received an email. And the message is clear, is please follow the U.S. authorities' evacuation orders. This is about making sure that your life is safe, that the life of your loved ones are safe as well. And for all of those who are thinking of going to Florida right now, wait, this is not the time. So, of course, we're in contact with American officials. Donc, pour tous ceux et celles qui sont présentement en Floride, bien entendu, nos pensées sont avec vous. Le plus important présentement, c'est, s'il vous plaît, suivez les ordres d'évacuation. Again, Beirut and Istanbul, and there will be more to come. At this point, we're at 1,200 Canadians that have been assisted in departing Lebanon. And of course, my message is always the same. The situation is extremely volatile, extremely dangerous. Please, if you're offered a seat, take it. What we're seeing is there's around 100 people contacting us now per day to get more information about assisted departures. Everybody should have been contacted. So please make sure to go on the website of Global Affairs Canada, seeing the link to Lebanon, and get the information. It's really, really important. Donc, présentement, aujourd'hui, il y a 122 personnes qui quittent le Liban et on va appuyer le départ de 15 citoyens britanniques. Demain, il y a environ 100 sièges qui sont réservés pour des citoyens canadiens pour quitter Beyrouth en direction d'Istanbul. Il y a environ 1200 Canadiens qui ont, à ce stade-ci, été soutenus dans cette opération de départ assisté. Et il va y avoir plus d'informations qui vont être données au cours des prochains jours à cet effet-là. Et ce que je peux vous dire aussi, c'est qu'il y a environ 100 personnes par jour qui nous contactent, qui communiquent avec nous pour avoir plus d'informations. Toutes ces personnes-là sont contactées. Et donc, si vous avez des questions, n'hésitez pas à communiquer avec Affaires mondiales Canada. Oui.
On Mr. Poilievre's comments yesterday, he said he doubled down on his comments that he would support Israel proactively striking Iran's nuclear site. Does that concern you about an escalation, or is that something that Canada would support as well?
First and foremost, the position of Canada has always been to bring back peace and stability to the Middle East. Israel has said that they would retaliate and that they would do so, and consequences would be severe. What the G7 has said, all countries of the G7, is that answer needed to be proportionate. And that's what we'll continue to advocate for. And we stand along the 7 most influential and impactful countries in the world.
And so specifically targeting those nuclear sites, would that be proportionate?
My point is it needs to be proportionate, and the President of the United States has already said that he's against it.
On Lebanon, can I just ask you, just for Canadians whose family members are non-Canadian, they're not Canadian. Yes, Lebanon. Do they need a Canadian visa to get on these flights, these Canadian flights? Because we're hearing that they can't get on.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. We've been having two approaches. We've been sometimes offering charters, and sometimes we've been offering seats on commercial flights. So we've been able to adjust to the different realities of Canadians. So in that sense, we've been able to offer solutions to Canadians that had issues with some of their loved ones, you know, basically children or spouses, that didn't have all their documents ready. That being said, my message is always the same. Get your documents ready. It's really important. But I understand that at this point, because we've been dealing with more than 1,000 Canadians that have different circumstances, from different walks of life, that's why we've been able to be adaptable.
For those who don't have the documents, like what option is there? Can they take the charter? Can they take the seats that are reserved on the?
They can take the seats, and that's on commercial flights because we're sending them to Turkey. So that's why we've been
need a visa on the commercial flights.
That's why we've been working with some cases.
On the hurricane, do you have an idea of how many Canadians are in Florida at the moment? It's a popular spot for snowbirds. And what would your advice be if people have property down there and are worried about their property in the aftermath of what happens?
So on that very question, my department will be able to answer you today, because of course I asked that question, and we know that there are millions of Canadians that go to Florida every year. That being said, as of now, how many are in the affected region, I need to get back to you with that number. That being said, we know all of us go to Florida. We don't necessarily register with the embassy. And so when you look at the number, it's just an indication, but that's clearly not the entire picture.
And for people with property down there in the aftermath of the storm, what should they be doing and who should they be contacting? And how might consular services be impacted for the Canadians who are down there right now in a natural disaster scenario like this?
So in every form, can you just, thank you. Okay, so for everyone that is affected by the situation, of course, people need to follow evacuation orders because you have to follow the local authorities, what they say. And you've heard it many times, it's a question of life or death. So people need to follow the evacuation orders. It's really, really important. And we're there to assist anybody that has questions or need help. Of course, Canada stands ready.
La sanction que M. Poilievre a eue de ne pas pouvoir parler pendant une journée, est-ce que c'est assez sévère, selon vous?
Non.
Il devrait être tenu au silence plus longtemps.
Mais c'est parce que la réalité avec Pierre Poilievre, là, c'est que même s'il continue à dire des mensonges, c'est pas parce qu'il continue que ça va devenir une vérité. Fait que là, il a continué à dire ses mensonges hier, puis là, il va continuer aujourd'hui. Puis entre-temps, il s'est toujours pas excusé. Et moi, je vais mettre...
Sorry, gang. Not much for when she's speaking. Not much for her when she's speaking English.
Avoir une solution à deux demandes, c'est le 1.
One more question.
So the problem with Pierre Poilievre is that using the term peace is a taboo for him. We all know that what is required right now in the Middle East is peace and stability. That's what people in Israel want. That's what people in Gaza want. That's what people in Lebanon want. That's what people in the West Bank want. And Canada has had the same position for 30 years since the Oslo Accords, which is the one of a two-state solution, which Pierre Poilievre is actually against. And you know what? The Netanyahu government is also against. And Hamas is also against. Because Hamas wanted to launch the attack on 7th of October last year to make sure that that would not happen. And not only that, that the deal with Saudi Arabia would not happen. Also, they still have the hostages and they haven't released them. And they're still in control of Gaza. And so our position is clear. We need to bring back peace and stability to the Middle East. We need, like I said, a ceasefire in Gaza and the release of hostages, and Hamas must lay down its weapons. We need a ceasefire in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel, and we need to make sure that ultimately we bring back peace and stability in the Middle East.
Are you saying that this potential, well, the proposal of Mr. Poilievre to preemptively strike nuclear production facilities, are you saying that that's against international law or against Canada's policy towards how to get to peace?
Well, first, it is against international law, period. Second, we need to make sure that there's a proportionate response by Israel to, of course, an attack that they were victims of by Iran. So that's why the G7 came as one. And we said we need to make sure that Israel has a proportionate response. So I was talking with American colleagues again yesterday to make sure that we put pressure on the Israeli government. And at the same time, that we're able to put pressure on all parties, and Iran, who's a terrorist regime, with all its terrorist proxies, which are Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, to make sure that we put pressure on them too. So diplomacy is still happening, and diplomacy can bring back peace and stability to the Middle East.
So is it time for Canada then to accelerate its recognition of the other state in this two-state solution, Palestine?
Well, the committee is already looking into that right now. I've had numerous conversations.
Independent, though. You said before that this committee is doing independent work.
Yeah, that's it. But that's why they're doing that independent work, which is important. What we said on the recognition of Palestine, which is our position that I announced back in May, and the Prime Minister announced back in May, and that I mentioned at the UN's, also at the General Assembly 2 weeks ago, is that Canada, when it will be the right time, will recognize the Palestinian state. Why? Because there are two things. First, the Netanyahu government is against it. Second, Hamas is still in control of Gaza and in control of hostages, and that's why, since we don't have the right parties to get it, Canada reserves its right to say when it will be the right time. And right now, we need to agree on what will be the conditions for that recognition, because I think that recognition will be impactful, because Canada is a country that has a lot of impact in the world, and that's why we're looking at what could be the conditions, and the work being done by the committee is important. Thank you.
Just say yes and handle the documents.
All right, gang, I think we're going to jump over to question period now. Like, it hasn't started, but they do these debates and statements, and sometimes it's interesting, like the lead up to question period. I'm guessing that it's on my clock 3:02, so probably it's supposed to start in 13 minutes, but I'm guessing it'll probably be 17 or 18. Anyhow, we're gonna cross over to that. We've got it ready to go. Oh, Ben Carr, we saw him earlier putting his foot down. Was acting like a real man. Pretending.
More back through the Canada carbon rebate, and those who pollute less save even more. It's fighting climate change, and for the first time in our history, Canada is on track to meet our climate goals. Thank you.
Here. The honourable member from Edmonton, Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, today is World Mental Health Day, and it's my absolute pleasure to highlight the critical work of the Canadian Alliance for Mental Illness and Mental Health, or CAMI, a coalition of 18 national mental health organizations representing Canadians with lived experience with mental illness and their care providers. Each year, CAMI celebrates the champions of mental health, individuals that have made a powerful, positive impact on the mental health of Canadians. Earlier today, CAMI recognized this year's 7 champions, including my good friend and colleague, the Member of Parliament for my neighbour to the north, Edmonton Riverbend.
Bravo.
These 7 extraordinary individuals have demonstrated unparalleled dedication to improving mental health and substance use care across Canada. Through their relentless efforts and innovative approaches, they've made a profound impact on the lives of countless Canadians. Mr. Speaker, I ask all of my colleagues to join me in congratulating this year's champions and offering them our heartfelt gratitude for their enduring contribution to our great country.
Hear, hear, hear. The honourable member from Sydney, Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, good
news! Guess what's happening next week in Nova Scotia? The Canada Carbon Rebate will be distributed to Nova Scotians and deposited into their bank accounts on October 15. A family in Nova Scotia will receive $206 through the Canada Carbon Rebate. But it doesn't stop there. For a family living in rural Cape Breton, like in my riding of Sydney, Victoria, their October rebate will include a double rural top-up for a total amount of $288. Thanks to our climate plan, we're now on track to meet our climate goals for the first time in Canadian history. We're reducing our emissions, growing our economy, and tackling inflation, all while making life more affordable for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good job.
The Honourable Member for Abitibi Témiscamingue. From October 23rd to October 31st, young athletes aged 15 to 17 from all over Quebec will be taking part in the International School Sports Federation's School Olympic Games in Bahrain. There's some 60 athletes and parents here today on the Hill. And for many of them, this will be the result of countless hours of training and many sacrifices. All of this to live a unique experience. So unique it makes me jealous. These athletes will be wearing the fleur-de-lis and they represent Quebec and they show the colors of our country in the making. Mr. Speaker, my two boys, Jules and Léon, are athletes. And it's thanks to the Fondation Équipe Quebec, a new dream is possible for them to represent Quebec on the international stage. So I have a message for the delegation of young athletes here from Quebec. You are the trailblazers, the dream igniters. When you compete, you'll have the whole nation behind you because you make the dream of wearing Quebec's colors possible. You already have your medal. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Sackville Preston, Chesapeake. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My friends from Nova Scotia, you will see the Canada's carbon rebate hit your bank account again on October 15th. You will receive $206 through the Canada Carbon Rebate. So this is... We've made the carbon rebate fairer for rural residents by doubling the rural top-up retroactive to April. Mr. Speaker, while the Conservative leader is preoccupied with giving a free pass to his friends in big oil and eliminating rebates for Canadians, his refusal to fight climate change and his slogans against climate change will cost Canadians even more. Our government continues to reduce emissions while improving conditions for the lives of Canadians. Thank you.
The honourable member from Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
I rise to honour the life of a remarkable community leader, Monsignor Kevin Maloney, who after 52 years as an ordained priest left us last month. Father Kevin, as he was best known, dedicated his life to serve with compassion and kindness, touching the hearts of countless people in Cornwall and SD&G. His contributions to the Catholic Church and to our entire community were immeasurable, and his recognition as the 2018 Cornwall Citizen of the Year was one of the many accolades he truly deserved. Father Kevin was more than a leader. He was a beacon of hope and joy, known for his infectious laughter and kind spirit. Whether at church or community suppers or charity events, he brought laughter and light to every room that he entered. Father Kevin will be deeply missed, and as we reflect on his life and the impact he made, I will say this. At the pearly gates up above, God had an easy answer in welcoming one of Cornwall's best angels to heaven. Rest in peace, my friend, and thank you for a life of service.
The Honourable Member for Ottawa-Vanier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ontario, Canada's carbon rebate will be in your bank account once again on October 15th. Ontario families of 4 will receive $280 next week. Mr. Speaker, that's a total of $1,120 this year for Ontario and Ottawa-Vanier families. The Conservatives want to let their rich friends off the hook while making the middle class pay the price. The Conservatives know that the middle class will pay when they take away carbon tax rebates. They'll pay when they take away affordable child care. and they'll pay the costs of climate change when the Conservatives do nothing to fight it. The facts are the facts. The middle class can't afford Conservative cuts. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Then I have the member from Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Inflation is down, interest rates are down, and our emissions are going down too. And our economy is growing, and the Canada Carbon Rebate is making life more affordable. Mr. Speaker, today the PBO released a report that clears the air for Canadians and calls out the Conservative campaign of misinformation. Big polluters pay, and more money goes back to Canadians. On October 15th, Canadians will receive their Canada Carbon Rebate, and in my home province of Ontario, a family of 4 will receive a rebate of $280 every 3 months for a total of $1,120 this year. But the Conservatives would rather rip up the rebate, ignore climate change altogether, just to help out their rich oil and gas friends. But unlike Conservatives who fan the flames of conspiracies as wildfires, hurricanes and floods force Canadians from their homes, we're focused on the facts on this side, just like the facts in this report, like the facts that show that climate change is real, like the fact that most Canadians want governments to fight climate change. Our policies not only protect the environment and nature, but also ensures the people on our planet are protected into the future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm going to invite the honourable member from Timmins James Bay, please, not to take the floor unless recognized by the chair. The honourable member from Prince George, Peace River, Northern Rockies.
After 9 years of the NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. Mr. Speaker, you have ruled that the NDP Liberals have violated a House order to turn over evidence to the police for a criminal investigation into the latest Liberal $400 million scandal, effectively obstructing justice. The Auditor General's findings that Liberal appointees at Sustainable Development Technology Canada gave nearly $400 million to their own companies with over 186 conflicts of interest, at a time when Canadians can't afford to eat, heat and house themselves. The radical Environment Minister is directly involved in the scandal, as he was the former lobbyist for a board member's company, where he brought in $110 million for the company, a company the minister still owns shares in. The NDP Liberals' refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed all our work to address the doubling of housing costs, food inflation, crime and chaos. While the NDP Liberals end the cover-up, give proof to the police so we can get accountability for corruption and Parliament can get back to work for Canadians.
Hear, hear. The honourable member for Winnipeg North.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good news, bad news. First, the good news, Mr. Speaker. You know, 4 times every year, there's the carbon rebate that goes out, Mr. Speaker. Well, therein it lies the good news. On Tuesday, October the 15th, hundreds of dollars are going to be going to the households in Winnipeg North and so many other constituencies. Now the bad news, Mr. Speaker. There was a time in which the Conservatives actually supported putting a tax on carbon, but they flip-flopped on that, Mr. Speaker, and the leader of the far right today says that he is going to get rid of the carbon rebate, Mr. Speaker. That is most unfortunate, because Canadians should be encouraged to participate in a positive way in regards to our environment, and giving the carbon rebate is a good thing, Mr. Speaker. They should flip-flop again, and let's get behind the carbon rebates.
The honourable member from Medicine Hat, Cardston, Warner.
Thank you, Speaker. Canadians are well aware that the NDP Liberals are not worth the cost, crime or corruption. At issue is the Auditor General's findings that the Liberal appointees to the Green Slush Fund gave nearly $400 million tax dollars to their own companies, with over 186 conflicts of interest, at a time when Canadians can't afford to eat, heat or house themselves. Speaker, you have ruled that the NDP Liberals have violated a House order to turn over evidence for a criminal investigation into this latest scandal, effectively obstructing justice. The government's refusal to respect your ruling has paralyzed Parliament, pushing aside all of our work to address the rising costs of housing, food inflation, and the issues of crime and chaos running rampant in our streets. Time is up, Mr. Speaker. It's time for the NDP Liberals to end the cover-up and corruption and provide the documents so Parliament can get working for Canadians.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Hear.
Thank you, buddy.
The honourable member from Cypress Hill, Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, after 9 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. Carbon taxes are up, and because of this Prime Minister's radical obsession with taxing Canadians into poverty, their costs are way up. Thankfully, time is up on his carbon taxes. We just received further confirmation that the carbon tax does blow a huge hole in the wallet of Canadians. The government's own budget watchdog said that in Saskatchewan, the average family will be robbed of over $2,000 every single year once the Prime Minister finishes increasing the carbon tax. That's $2,000 that could be used for food, for heating, for other essentials. And all this for what? The radical socialist environment minister publicly said that his own department doesn't even track whether or not the carbon tax reduces emissions. It is clear more than ever it is time to axe the tax. Since the Prime Minister refuses to do what is right, Canadians are demanding a carbon tax election. They can take comfort in knowing that Conservatives will axe the tax once and for all.
The honourable member from Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, good news. On Tuesday, October 15, the day after Thanksgiving, the residents in my constituency of Davenport will be giving thanks when they look in their bank accounts and see their quarterly Canada carbon rebate amount of $280 for a family of 4 or $140 for individuals. Canadians expect their federal government to take ambitious action on climate change, and thanks to the Canada carbon rebate and our climate plan, we are now on track to reach our climate goals for the first time in Canadian history. We have reduced our emissions by 8%, and Canada's 2024 National Inventory Report shows that Canada is on track to meet our emission reduction goals for 2026 and also on track for our 2030 targets. While the Conservatives are focused on empty slogans and want to rip up the carbon rebates, our government is focused on growing our economy, bringing inflation down, and making life more affordable for Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from New Westminster, Burnaby.
I rise today on World Mental Health Day to acknowledge a sobering reality. In any given year, 1 in 5 Canadians experiences mental health issues. Federal public safety employees who operate in a high-stress, unpredictable environment often work at great risk to their own mental health. That's why I tabled Bill C-357, an act aimed at creating presumptive mental health injury coverage for all federal public safety employees. This bill is a response to the long-standing call from the Union of Safety and Justice Employees to ensure that all federal public safety personnel have access to workers' compensation for mental health-related injuries. My bill seeks to rectify the current inequitable system that leaves federal government employees' benefits and entitlements dependent on the province in which they reside. Public safety employees work tirelessly to keep Canadians safe. It is our duty as MPs to help keep them safe as well by passing this bill. On this World Mental Health Day, let us commit to ensuring mental health supports for all. We stand with our dedicated public safety employees.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Berthier-Maskinongé. On Friday, October 11th, we celebrate World Egg Day. Eggs are a nutritious food produced by local farmers who are exceptional both for the quality of their production and the solidarity of their chosen marketing system, namely supply management. We've been waiting since June 2023 for the Senate to pass legislation to protect this supply management, and it's about time. An egg is a tasty food that can be enjoyed in many different ways. Supply management is essential to the economic vitality of our regions and to maintaining family businesses. They go hand in hand. Can anyone explain this to the few senators who don't care? There are over 200 supply-managed producers on the Hill today from all over Canada, and they're asking the law to be respected and sanctioned. Let's show some respect for our producers. The Senate must deliver, and why not earliest tomorrow on World Egg Day.
The honourable member for Cumberland Colchester.
After 9 years of NDP Liberals, taxes are up, costs are up, crime is up, and time is up. We've heard it 1,000 times before from Canadians in all walks of life, at the doors and in our communities. But today, the Parliamentary Budget Officer has confirmed what we've known all along, that the carbon tax has been taking more away from Canadians than what they get back through rebates. Nova Scotians are going to be paying a whopping $1,215 more after the NDP Liberal quadruples the carbon tax. For Canadians, this makes all the difference in the world. Canadians are out there, Nova Scotians are trying to put food on the table, gas in their cars, and a roof over their head, all at a time when they're worried about putting heating fuel in their homes for winter. All 10 provinces are now opposed to the crushing carbon tax. It's time for the Prime Minister to show some courage and call a carbon tax election. Will the Prime Minister call an election today?
The honourable member from Pickering-Uxbridge.
Mr. Speaker, October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and today the Union of Safety and Justice employees are here shedding light on the need for more robust mental health support for those who work to keep our communities safe. From the RCMP to correctional services workers, the USJE represents over 19,000 safety and justice employees across Canada. Like first responders, their exposure to traumatic events and graphic materials can have lasting impacts on them and their families. The pins we are wearing today are a symbol of the sacrifice and service these individuals make and the toll that their work has on their mental health. To all of the safety and justice workers across Canada, thank you for your service. We are committed to working together to ensure there are adequate supports put in place so you can continue your good work and take care of your mental health. Thank you. Thank you.
Questions orales, oral questions. The honourable member from Regina Capel.
We've got Andrew Scheer up first.
After 9 years of this Liberal Prime Minister, Canada has experienced a shocking rise in anti-Semitism and an increase in hate crimes of 165%. His divisive politics, where he pits one group of Canadians against another, only makes matters worse. It also doesn't help that he takes years to list terrorist groups to the list of banned organizations, allowing them to fundraise and recruit here in Canada. This one should be easy, though. The Houthis are attacking civilian ships and innocent civilians. Our allies have already banned them. So will the government do the right thing and list this group as a terrorist organization today?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, we unequivocally condemn the acts we saw in Vancouver that were launched by Sami Doon. Acts like burning the flag, chanting death to Canada, acts like denying the events of October 7th and celebrating terrorism are unacceptable in this country. With respect to Sami Doon, we heard the Minister of Public Safety reference this yesterday. We've asked for an expedited review because decisions of this importance are always made on the advice of national security agencies.
The honourable member from Regina Capel.
They continue to drag their feet, Mr. Speaker, but there's been another blow to the Prime Minister's carbon tax scheme. A new report from the Parliamentary Budget Officer shows yet again that Canadians are worse off under this tax. Here's what the total bill will be when the NDP Liberals finish quadrupling this tax. It'll cost people in Ontario $1,400, $1,500 in Newfoundland, and a whopping $2,000 in Saskatchewan. Canadians are already struggling with higher costs, higher groceries, and higher mortgage rates. The last thing they need is another bill from a useless carbon tax. If the government's so sure that Canadians support the tax, why not let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, let me read you the first paragraph of the PBO's report. And I quote, "Considering only the fiscal impact of federal fuel charge, PBO estimates that average household in each of the backstop provinces in 2030-31 will see a net gain, receiving more from the Canada Carbon Rebate than the total amount they paid in federal fuel charge and related GST." Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition should apologize to Canadians for misleading them all these months.
Colleagues on all sides, please, I'm going to ask you to not take the floor unless the Speaker recognizes you. The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
The minister might want to read the rest of the report because in the quote he cited, he focused on a very key word: only the direct costs. When you factor in all the economic costs, it costs the Canadian household $1,400. Canadians are net losers under this carbon tax scheme, and this minister knows it. Right. So, if he's so sure that Canadians want this government to keep quadrupling the tax, why not let the people decide in a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Let me read you another paragraph from the report, Mr. Speaker. Moreover, in 2030-31, for all backstop provinces, we estimate that the average household in each income quintile will see a net gain, except for average household in the highest income quintile, Mr. Speaker. You know what the Leader of the Opposition is doing? He wants to take money away from the middle class and poorer Canadians to protect his rich CEO friends. That's what he's doing, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, wow. The Honourable Member from Foothills.
The Minister is trying very hard to get Canadians not to understand the details. But the details are, and the facts are, that the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed what Canadians already know. Exactly. They're being robbed by a carbon tax, which is driving up the cost of groceries, of gas, and everyday essentials. In fact, a family in Prince Edward Island will pay almost $1,200 a year when the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax. Canadians don't support the carbon tax. We know 10 provinces don't support the carbon tax. Will the Prime Minister listen to Canadians and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
The member talks about the agricultural sector. Well, let's talk about the climate impacts on the agricultural sector, Mr. Speaker. Droughts in 2021 resulted in 27% decline in Canada's grain production. Over the last decade, over 200 Canadian farmers have experienced cost increases and revenue loss from climate impacts, Mr. Speaker. This member and this party never talks about the impacts of climate change on farmers, on the price of food in Canada. They want to try and make us believe that climate change isn't happening. It is happening, and on this side of the House, we're here for Canadians, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
The Minister is either living in denial or purposely misleading Canadians, because the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report is clear. It costs Canadians more to pay the carbon tax than what they get back in rebates. But if the Minister doesn't believe me, I would encourage him to read the Parliamentary Budget report. But in the essence of time, let me help out. Page 19 states Canadians are worse off paying the carbon tax, period. That is the fact. But again, if the Minister is so confident that Canadians support this carbon tax, why are they so afraid to call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
The member points to indirect costs, Mr. Speaker. Let's talk about indirect costs. Loss of revenue of $150 million in 2023 due to flooded in farmlands across this country, Mr. Speaker. The dairy farmers, egg farmers of Canada, grain growers, Canal Council all support our plan to fight climate change. It's time for the Conservative Party of Canada to come on board, Mr. Speaker.
Alors, order. L'honorable député de Salaberry-sur-Roi.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. In the Bloc Québécois, we...
So, what do you guys think about 5 rounds of English to kick off question period? It's been a while since I've seen that. Andrew Scheer did all 3 rounds, and then Barlow backed him up. What do you think about the amount of translation that is used in the House of Commons? I think that French is important. Not a fan of the Bloc at all. Like, I just don't agree with their party. It's not the French I mind. I don't like the translators. It sounds funny. I do not mind having 5 rounds of English to kick things off. Anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the subtitles. Send me emails if you think they're important. I think I'm going to keep them, even though they're delayed. But you can see these numbers. People seem to appreciate the... oh, Lord.
Today we support supply management. Being a dairy farmer in Prince Edward Island, I'm fully aware of the values of supply management, and I urge the Senate to pass Bill 282. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Supply management is an agricultural model which will protect the future of...
Sorry, gang, we got interrupted. I didn't know Lawrence Macaulay was going to get up there. Never want to miss Mr. Magoo. He's got so much to contribute. Anyhow, we're going to give some quick shout-outs to some people that are in the room. Sorry if I miss anybody, but Adam Louise, good to see you. Annie G. Antonio, Backyard Garden, always a pleasure. Blaze Lionheart, good luck in the job interview. BTJC 902, what's going on? My province. Chris Murray, Coyote, what is up? How are you today? Dan H., good to see you. Daryl Sittler, what's going on? Dirk Zink, welcome. Welcome to the chat. Gus Pappas, how you doing? Hemi Hamster, great to see you always. Jeff Vanderkoy, what is going on? Jim Bellingham, what is up, brother? Joe Sofat, how you doing? Julie Mack, always a pleasure to have you here. Kenzie Kraken, what's going on, girl? How are you today? Kirk, my man, beam me up. Busy one in here today, it seems too. Like Margaret, how you doing? Marie Perrin, always a pleasure to have you here in the chat with us. Mark H., welcome. How you doing? Mr. Pickles, brother, what is going on? Patty Zadow, always a pleasure to see you. SW, what is shaking? Scott Campbell, what is going on, brother? Sky Orange, good to see you. Steve Bloy, what is going on? How are you, man? You're a funny guy. Sylvain Robert, how are you doing? Sheila Hall, how have you been? It's good to see you back. The Randy, the other Randy, you're a funny guy too. Vamp Fashions, Wolfhound, and Yentas Bagels, what is up? We're back to this. Actually, we're going to probably back it up. Here. India.
Member from Burnaby South. Get this, a new study recently released shows that 94% of Canadians are worried about the high cost of groceries. And with Thanksgiving coming around the corner, they're worried that greedy CEOs are going to rip them off when they go grocery shopping. Now, I get why the Conservatives voted against our plan to lower grocery prices. Their chief strategist is a chief lobbyist for none other than Loblaws. But why did the Liberals vote against making sure we lower prices for Canadians? Why did they let greedy CEOs rip off Canadians?
Once again, I'm just going to ask members, please, to keep their voices down so that the chair can hear the honourable member, and those who require translation also be able to hear the interpretation. The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I thought the leader of the NDP would stand up and say thank you. Thank you to the Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. We have introduced the most comprehensive reform on competition in Canada's history. And I want to congratulate him for this contribution, Mr. Speaker. Today we'll have less concentration, we'll have more choice, and we will stabilize price in Canada. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, you should rejoice that now in Canada we have a grocery code of conduct, Mr. Speaker, that's going to help our farmers across Canada. That's going to help our small retailers. Mr. Canada, they should thank us to fight for Canadians every day.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Galen Weston speaking.
According to the Bank of Canada, people are increasingly having to use their credit card to pay for rent and groceries. Jennifer Smith from Toronto said to Radio Canada, "It's scary. I end up choosing to skip some credit card payments, even if it affects my credit score, if it means that I can keep my home and feed my children. That's what life is like under the Liberal government. When will the Liberals finally wake up?" The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I think the NDP leader should apologize because the only person who stood up to Galen Weston in this House is the Liberal government, Mr. Speaker. When we asked all of the grocery CEOs to come to Ottawa to explain themselves. But I think the leader of the NDP should also be pleased because not only have we improved the competition system in the country, we even included what he suggested because we know that it's hard for Canadians these days. That is why every day we are fighting hard to help Canadians with grocery prices. We will help them, and we have offered food programs for you throughout the country.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
After 9 years, taxes up, costs up, crimes up, time's up, Canadians are fed up. Right. New PBO report, same results. Canadians pay more into the carbon tax scam than what they get back in phony rebates. An average Albertan family will pay nearly $2,000 in carbon taxes after this radical Liberal NDP government quadruples the carbon tax. That's why 10 provinces oppose the carbon tax scam. They know it's like the Prime Minister and not worth the cost. If they're so sure about this carbon tax scam, why not call a carbon tax election now so Canadians can decide to axe the tax for good?
That's right. Call it now. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think everyone in this House and Canadians watching should take everything this finance critic says about the economy with a big grain of salt, Mr. Speaker. It is this finance critics that told us if we paused our federal taxes, people in his province could save $1,000 without telling them that they'd have to drive from the North Pole to the South Pole, Mr. Speaker, to benefit from those wonderful savings. So I think we should all be very, very careful with what he says about the economy in this House, Mr. Speaker. Yes.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
We won't take any lessons from that minister who let Jasper burn because of his incompetence. I'll send him over a copy of that PBO's report with some diagrams and some pictures so maybe he can understand, and flip over to page 19, table 3, that clearly shows a majority of Canadians pay more into this scam than what they get back in these phony rebates. That's right. 2 million Canadians are going into a food bank in a single month. 1 in 4 Canadians are skipping meals because of their carbon tax scam. If they're so sure about this carbon tax scam, let's go to a carbon tax election now so Canadians can kick this costly carbon tax coalition to the curb for good.
That's it. Call it. The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, we all suffer when we see that there are folks in our community that are struggling. And there is more work to be done, which is exactly why on this side of the House we continue to fight for Canadians, to fight for high-quality childcare, to fight for the Canada Child Benefit, to fight for the environment and the carbon rebate, Mr. Speaker. But let's not kid ourselves. We know that these programs that Canadians rely on would be in danger if the Conservatives had their way.
The honourable member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Today, the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed again that the carbon tax costs Canadians more than they get back in rebates. And when the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax, families in Ontario will be paying more than $1,400 a year in carbon taxes. This makes everything more expensive: gas, groceries, home heating. The NDP Liberal government and their carbon tax are not worth the cost. In fact, all 10 provinces are opposed to this costly coalition's carbon tax. So will the Prime Minister give Canadians what they want and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if you read the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report of today, you will see that he further confirmed once again that 8 out of 10 Canadian families get more in the carbon rebate than they pay in the price on pollution. And Mr. Speaker, it was also clear from today's report that the economic cost of pollution is not being factored in. And that cost is $34 billion per year, Mr. Speaker. And that does not include the billions of dollars that disaster mitigation costs. Every time there's a disaster in this country, it costs Canadian taxpayers. We are there in order to take climate action.
Hear, hear. I invite the honourable member from Edmonton West, please, to keep his counsel until he has the floor to speak before the House. The honourable member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Well, once again, Liberal logic is on display and their math doesn't add up. It seems the Liberals have a hard time with basic concepts like, reality or how money works. So let me make this really simple. Table 3 on page 19 of the PBO report shows what the cost of the carbon tax is. And I can send the minister a copy. The PBO says Canadians are paying more in carbon tax and GST on top of the carbon tax than they get back in rebates. And the reality is people have less money to pay for food, fuel, and home heating. Enough is enough. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Enough is enough. 300 economists have said it. The pay rich more, the rich pay more, middle class Canadians pay less. Everyone gets the same rebate. The rich pay more than they receive. Middle class Canadians receive more than they pay. It's that simple, Mr. Speaker.
L'Honorable.
The Honourable Member for Charlesbourg-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is scoffing at your authority and the authority of this House. More than $400 million in taxpayer money was handed off to Liberal buddies, and the Prime Minister is still refusing to give evidence to the RCMP. He's obstructing justice. Canadians know very well that someone with nothing to hide would be happy to cooperate with the police. So who will have the courage to rise in this House and answer why? The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the member has said is false. This government has given thousands of dollars in documents in response to this motion, and the motion was very clear. It was clearly stated that it was an abuse of the power of this place, and because of that we should refer the matter to committee. We respect police authority here, so why don't the Conservatives? The Honourable Member. So, Mr. Speaker, if I understand correctly, the Government House Leader just said that you and we are engaged in abuse of power. But I think your ruling was quite clear, and that's why Parliament's work is blocked. The Prime Minister and his government are refusing to provide documents on this $400 million taxpayer scandal. Meanwhile, there are many difficulties in Canada. People are struggling, but this government isn't doing anything because this government doesn't want to listen to your ruling. Why? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Why? Mr. Speaker, because this is not a banana republic. In Canada, it is not politicians who tell the RCMP what to do. On the contrary, it's the opposite. And in this case, the RCMP has clearly stated that it does not want these documents because it might be risky to use them and it might actually sabotage their inquiry. If these Conservatives, with their banana republic policies, were to insist on giving the documents, it might undermine the inquiry. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, this morning farmers came from all over to Ottawa, from Quebec, Ontario, Saskatchewan, the Northwest Territories, all over the place. They all came to show their support for Bill C-282. There were also representatives of all of the parties present, the Greens, NDP, Conservatives, Liberals. They were all there to show solidarity for this Bloc Québécois bill, which has become this entire Parliament's bill. Everyone except for Mr. Hart or Mr. Beam, two appointed senators who have decided to start a crusade against our farmers. Who is going to finally bring them into line? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, we completely agree with our colleague from the Bloc Québécois. We support the supply managed system. And we are asking the senators to show diligence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Well, there were even some senators there this morning to apologize for the Senate's behavior, as they should, because there are two senators, Harder and Beam, appointed by the Prime Minister, not elected, who are sabotaging our democratic process. These two senators care more about what big lobbyists want than what Canadians at large want. So if we don't do anything about this, we'll be letting democracy be flouted under our noses. What is the government going to do to ensure that this bill, which has been adopted by a majority of members in the House of Commons, what is it going to do to get it out of the Senate? The Honourable Minister. Thank you. Once again, Mr. Speaker, we support the supply management system. We will enable it to continue to flourish. It's important for our regions and our economy. We have been asking the senators to act diligently. We have been asking that with great vigor because the Senate should recognize that the great majority in this House wants this bill to move forward. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Senator Beam said that he cannot study this bill about supply management because in case we hadn't heard about it, there are some wars going on right now. So he and Mr. Harder, apparently two future Nobel Peace Prize laureates, well, they're going to start by fixing the problem of war, and then perhaps they'll have time to bring their superior intelligence to the matter of supply management. These people really seem to think that they're quite something. Enough is enough. Will this government tell Mr. Harder and Mr. Beam to fall into line, and will they get Bill C-282 out of the Senate now? The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This Liberal government supports the supply management system. We have committed to make no further concessions. We have been clearly stating that the senators should act diligently, but these are independent senators. I think the Bloc Québécois understands that concept. Thank you.
The honourable member from Durham.
Mr. Speaker, today the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirmed once again that the carbon tax is costing Canadian families more than they're getting back in rebates. Once the NDP Liberals quadruple the carbon tax, as they intend to do, the average family in Ontario will pay an additional tax up to $1,400. Now, to Liberal elites, that might not sound like a lot of money. The Prime Minister could probably find $1,400 in between his couch cushions. But to the average Canadian family, that's quite a lot of money. So when are we going to get the carbon tax election Canadians desperately deserve?
That's right. Good question. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Let me read again, Mr. Speaker, from the Parliament Budget Officer's report, and I quote, The general consensus amongst economists is that explicit carbon pricing is the most effective approach to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The Conservative Party of Canada has no plan to fight climate change. The Conservative Party of Canada has no plan to adapt to the massive impacts of climate change that are costing Canadians tens of billions of dollars, Mr. Speaker. The Conservative Party of Canada has no plan for the economy. The Conservative Party of Canada has nothing to say about this conversation, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Durham.
Mr. Speaker, you like to talk about civility and decorum. And in the interest of civility and decorum, I'd like to invite the Minister to Table 3. Table 3 on page 19 of the PBO report, which details the overall cost of the carbon tax. Maybe when the Environmental Minister actually reviews the report and Table 3 on page 19, he might agree with me and most other Canadians that we need a carbon tax election now. So will the Minister review the table, come back to us and say when we're going to get an election that Canadians deserve? Thank you.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, in the interest of clarity, I think Canadians would like to understand what the Conservatives plan to cut. And he talks about families in Ontario. Well, they refuse to talk about the Canada Child Benefit that puts thousands of dollars in the pockets of Canadian families every single year. They refuse to talk about childcare that saves Canadian families thousands of dollars every year. And when they talk about the price on pollution, Mr. Speaker, they conveniently omit the fact that Canadian families get more money back than they put in. Mr. Speaker, they want to put their hands in the pockets of Canadians and take that money away. Thank you.
Good answer.
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Mr. Speaker, Statistics Canada confirmed today what millions of Canadians already know. While the rich are getting richer, the most vulnerable are falling further and further behind. Today, Stats Canada reported that the gap between the 40% top earners and the 40% bottom earners grew by nearly 50%. They reported that income inequity has never been higher in our country. Wow. This government has a choice. Will they continue their agenda in causing misery across our country, or will they finally call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Mr. Speaker, I recently got to meet with a young mom named Madeline from my community who shared with me how important the Canada Child Benefit has been to her young family in these early days. The Conservatives have made their position very clear, Mr. Speaker. They would cut the Canada Child Benefit and leave the 4.3 million mums across this country, like Madeline, without the support that they need. That is what Conservative cuts look like, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, when the NDP gets to work, the results are clear. Thanks to NDP pressure, Premier Legault backtracked on his decision to not offer dental care to Quebecers. Now, the Liberals, we remember the Prime Minister's promises: more doctors, more nurses, a better working public health care system for everyone. 9 years later, 500,000 Quebecers don't have a family doctor. Broken promises from the Liberals, and people are paying the price. When will the Liberals get to work to make sure that everyone has a family doctor? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank and congratulate my colleague from the NDP from Montreal, as well as all members of the NDP, for their support for the Canada Dental Care Plan. It's made a major difference for Quebecers. There are 800,000 Quebec seniors who now have a Canada Dental Care Plan card, and 250,000 of them for the first time in many years, in many cases, have had access to affordable dental care. It's thanks to great cooperation with great results for Quebecers, even if the Conservatives claim this program doesn't exist.
Westminster Burnaby would please not take the floor unless recognized by the House. The Honourable Member from Churchill, Kiwatinuk-Aski.
Mr. Speaker, this week Canada's lawyers argued in federal court that First Nations leaders are showing a, quote, lack of maturity in their fight for clean drinking water. A lack of maturity. This language is unbelievable. It is deeply offensive, paternalistic, and discriminatory. Let's be clear, the lack of clean drinking water on reserve didn't just happen. It is the result of decades of neglect from Conservatives and Liberals towards First Nations. So will the Prime Minister apologize on behalf of his lawyers for this deeply offensive language? Will he call off his lawyers, stop fighting Shamattawa and Tatasquak, and deliver clean water now?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I just met with the Chief from Tatasquak just a few hours ago, and we talked about the importance of Bill C-61, the work that Tatasquak and the other communities have done on this legislation to ensure that we never go back to a time where well over 145 communities were suffering through long-term boil water advisories. That's the work that this government will continue to do in partnership with First Nations leaders, and I hope that the NDP will see that this is important legislation that needs to get through this House and that will have their full support.
The Honourable Member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Climate change is an issue that affects us all, and small businesses are not immune to the devastating effects of a changing climate. Small businesses in my riding of Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, like Windfall Ecology, have been contributing to the fight against climate change through the services they provide, the Price on Pollution program, and so much more. Can the Minister of Small Business tell Canadians about the measures our government has put in place to help all small businesses as they deal with the impacts of a changing climate and the fight against it?
The Honourable Minister for Small Businesses.
Speaker, and I want to thank my honourable colleague for that question. As a former small business entrepreneur myself, I understand the importance of affordability, which is why our government is delivering $2.5 billion to close to 600,000 small and medium-sized enterprises by the end of the year through the Canada Carbon Rebate. And as I mentioned already, we've negotiated agreements with both Visa and MasterCard to reduce their interchange fees by up to 27%. This is real, tangible difference that's going to help small businesses across this country. So we're going to continue to fight climate change while supporting small businesses. And happy Small Business Month, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, in the $400 million corruption scandal, which is the Green Slush Fund, you, Mr. Speaker, ruled that the Canadian people have the absolute right to demand the unredacted production of documents be given to the police. But this government refuses Parliament's absolute authority. Shame. Parliament is the people, and the absolute authority of Parliament is like your mom checking your room after you said you cleaned it. You know, you might be able to hide one or two things, and the government may be able to think they get off the hook, but Parliament is there to inspect and clean the House. Mr. Speaker, this is a messy House. When will this government clean it?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Great job, Ryan. Speaker,
as I've said, the government has handed over thousands of pages of documents. However, the big issue here that I think Canadians are concerned about is that they know politicians shouldn't be directing police.
Exactly.
And what is at issue here is the fact that this House has decided that they are judge and jury and that the police should investigate something. We have no problem with police investigations. In fact, of course, any government would respond to them. And I would expect that any government of any stripe would react the same way we are today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Bay of Quinte.
Mr. Speaker, the police have already opened an investigation. This is just Parliament asking for documents to be turned over. It's the ask and the absolute rule of Parliament, and this government's refusing. Just think of it like a business, right? This government forgets that in a business, they're the employee. The Canadian public are the owners. In the real world, if a business refused or employees refuse to hand over documents or hand over anything in investigation, those employees will be fired. Mr. Speaker, is this government just waiting to be fired by the Canadian public, or will they hand over the documents?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, in the real world, police have to request warrants. They have to go through due process to get information. It's not up to parliamentarians and politicians to direct police because they have a political vendetta. Mr. Speaker, Canadians expect due process, and they expect that politicians are here to protect their rights, not to get rid of their rights.
Exactement.
The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is so much Liberal corruption that Liberals are covering up their cover-up of the $400 million of corruption at the Liberal Green Slush Fund. The Speaker ruled that the NDP Liberals violated the House order to turn the Green Slush Fund documents over to the RCMP criminal investigation. Obstruction of justice is the Liberals' middle name. They refused to turn over documents in the SNC scandal, in the We Charity scandal, in the Winnipeg Lab scandal, and the foreign interference scandal. Just end the corruption cover-up and turn the documents over to the RCMP. How bad is it?
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, every Canadian watching right now wants parliamentarians to do their job. The job of the opposition is to hold the government to account. The job of the opposition is not to direct the police. You don't need to take my word for it, Mr. Speaker. How about we hear from the Commissioner of the RCMP himself, who said that, quote, there is a significant risk that the motion could be interpreted as a circumvention of normal investigative processes and charter protections. He went on, in a free and democratic society, this ensures that the government cannot direct or influence the actions of law enforcement. We agree with the RCMP. It's time these guys start listening to the cops.
The honourable member from South Shore, St. Margaret's.
The Liberals blacked out so much in the documents that the Prime Minister's office ran out of toner for their copiers. So apparently it's okay to turn blacked out documents that hide Liberal corruption over to the RCMP. That's not a constitutional issue, but it is a constitutional issue to remove the redactions and expose the Liberal corruption. News for this minister, the Constitution does not exist to protect Liberals from criminal investigation. So will they just stop their cover-up addiction, and hand the unedited documents over to the RCMP?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
I have some grave concerns with what the member opposite said, beginning with the fact that I assume he's actually not seen those documents, so I'm not sure what he's talking about there, because the documents have been handed over. But what's of greater concern, and it was the RCMP who said it themselves, is that the way that the Conservatives are acting would actually compromise any police investigation, because the evidence would not be considered. So what is of concern is that they're interfering in an investigation, they're interfering in police independence, and Canadians should be rightly concerned that Conservative politicians want to direct the police. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Shefford. Sometimes it seems like the Liberals are doing their best to be disliked. 79% of Quebecers and Canadians are calling for an increase in OAS for seniors aged 65 to 74. 79% support. You know, it's hard to be more popular than that. all seniors are asking that they stop being divided into two classes of citizens. And people of all ages are calling for this, even some of the youngest. Even the House stopped bickering for 2 minutes to call for it. The Liberals are all alone on this. Why are they so keen to deny income to 1 million Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, it's very interesting to hear my colleague talk about seniors aged 65 to 74 when we know that member and her...
Yeah, gang, I don't mean to go so hard at Karina Gould, but I have a person that I think that, I'm not a person of hate, but like the way that she lies to Canadians so willingly, she puts me out. Like, honestly, like if I saw her at the grocery store, I don't think of her as a woman. She's an alien, and she's not from this planet.
To deny income to 1 million Quebec seniors. They're completely disconnected and people can see it. And we've been very clear, the Liberals have until October 29th to pass C-319 and increase pension for seniors aged 65 to 74. Time's going quickly, especially since the Senate doesn't seem to be in any hurry these days. Why is it so important for the Liberals to go to the polls over this lack of consideration for seniors? The Honourable Minister of Labour and Seniors. Mr. Speaker, we could put more credibility into the words of the Sovereignist Party across the way if they hadn't openly acted aggressively to oppose hundreds and hundreds of dollars in dental care for each and every senior who needs it, not just in Quebec, but across Canada. Including, Mr. Speaker, 14,000 seniors in her own riding. Mr. Speaker, there's no coherence here. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, you decided that the NDP Liberal government violated an order of this House by refusing to provide evidence to the police for a criminal investigation into this $400 million Liberal scandal. Mr. Speaker, the Liberals' refusal to provide these documents is an insult to the intelligence of Canadians. Will the Liberals stop playing hide-and-seek, provide the evidence to the police so that Parliament can do its work with transparency and get back to work for all Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I think that Canadians should be truly concerned by this, because what we're seeing today and what we've seen in recent days, Mr. Speaker, is very concerning. The Conservative Party wants to direct the police, Mr. Speaker. Imagine in what state we would be if the Conservative Party, with the Conservative leader, imagine this, wanted to direct the work of the RCMP, Mr. Speaker. The RCMP has been very clear. There's an important risk that the motion be seen as a way of getting around charter rights and due process. We are going to fight to preserve democracy. The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are facing really tough times, but times have never been better for well-connected Liberal buddies. The Auditor General has shown major discrepancies at SDTC when it comes to funding small and medium-sized businesses. The noble goals of SDTC were tainted when its $1 billion budget was repurposed so that a certain few could line their pockets. Mr. Speaker, will the Liberals finally give Canadians the transparency that they deserve? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, people who are watching us at home and those who are in the galleries today understand the Conservatives' games very well. The game the Conservatives are playing, Mr. Speaker, is to try to direct police in Canada. Imagine where that'll lead us, Mr. Speaker. I challenge my colleague. 87% of the businesses in clean tech in Canada got funding from SDTC, Mr. Speaker. The truth is that this is a foundation that helped small businesses across the country. And I think, Mr. Speaker, the day that we let the Conservatives direct the work of the police, it would be a very concerning day for all of us. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, the House is paralysed because of another Liberal corruption scandal. It must be in their DNA. $400 million, 186 conflicts of interest at a time when Canadians can barely afford to feed, heat, and house themselves. But Liberal donors continue to line their pockets, and the Liberals are continuing to protect themselves and their buddies by hiding the documents. When will the government give the police the documents that they need and get back the $400 million of taxpayers' money that's disappeared? The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, what we've seen over the last few days is concerning for all Canadians. The reality of what we're seeing in the House is that the Conservatives are now trying to direct police services in this country. Mr. Speaker, in the history of Canada, what the Conservatives are trying to do is unprecedented. On this side of the House, we act responsibly. We have already provided the documents to the police, Mr. Speaker. There's been an Auditor General investigation. Documents have been provided, but what the Conservatives are trying to do right now is put a stain on democracy and prevent this House from working in the interest of all Canadians.
The Honourable Member from Buena Vista, Durin, Trinity.
Mr. Speaker, our government is taking real action to tackle
Mr.
the most
Monopoly.
pressing issues facing Canadians, and this includes climate change. Canadians know that climate change is making life more difficult and more expensive. We are a government that understands that the realities of rural Canadians differ from those of Canadians living in larger urban areas. Can the Minister of Indigenous Services and FedNor please tell Canadians how our government is supporting rural and remote communities right across the country?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services and FedNor.
Mr. Speaker, as the Minister of FedNor and Indigenous Services Canada, I hear firsthand from rural communities hit hard by climate change. In fact, just yesterday, we heard from chiefs from Northwest Territories talk about the most severe drought they've ever seen in their lifetime. In fact, it's putting their livelihoods, their ability to gather food, their ability to get goods up and down that river at risk, Mr. Speaker. They know, and so many Canadians know, we must do more to protect the climate and each other. Conservative MPs don't care about that, though. They don't even believe in climate change. And they don't really care about affordability either. They did all they could to block the rural top-up, an extra $280 for people in the member.
The Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday at the public inquiry, the Chief of Staff to the then Public Safety Minister was unwilling to explain why a CSIS warrant sat on the Minister's desk for 54 days, when, according to national security officials, such a warrant is typically signed off between 4 and 10 days. It has been reported that the subject of the warrant is a former Ontario Liberal cabinet minister. Does the minister really expect Canadians to believe that this 54-day delay had nothing to do with the partisan interests of a Liberal Party?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, it's ironic that the member opposite talks about political interest, because it was the Conservative leader, when he was the Minister of Democratic Institutions, said he wasn't going to take foreign interference seriously because it wasn't in his political interest to do so. On the other hand, on our side, this side of the House, we have taken the issues around foreign interference seriously since day one, including ensuring that we have protecting our democratic institutions, including the current study to look into Russian-based influencers operating in Canada that Conservatives want to block.
The Honourable Member from St. Albert, Edmonton.
Speaker, there is no other plausible explanation for the delay. It was about Liberals protecting Liberals. The Attorney General is responsible for seeing that Cabinet upholds the independent and non-partisan principles of our justice system. His Cabinet colleague put the partisan interests of the Liberal Party ahead of the administration of justice. What does the Attorney General have to say about that?
Hear, 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 hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to foreign interference, this is not a new phenomenon, but what is new to Canadians is a government that actually takes it seriously. That is precisely why we have implemented a number of measures to ensure that our democratic institutions are strengthened, to ensure that it's not at the whim of the leader of the opposition when he thinks there's some sort of political advantage to him. Mr. Speaker, we will take the issues around foreign interference, no matter where they are coming from, incredibly incredibly seriously and not cherry pick like the Conservatives do.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member from Calgary Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, Iranian-backed Houthis shoot down civilian merchant ships. They fire missile after missile at innocent Israelis. They disrupt international trade. They traffic in violence and fear across the Middle East. These terrorists can freely operate, fundraise, and recruit in Canada. The Americans banned them in January. NDP Liberals said they'd think about it. It's been 10 months. Ban the terrorists. Protect Canadians. What's there to think about?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see that Conservatives want to play games with incredibly serious issues. We on this side of the House will not. What we will do, Mr. Speaker, is we will ensure that the national security agencies in this country who make regular terrorist listing determinations, that they have the resources they need to do just that. These national security organizations in Canada are constantly reviewing the terrorist listing, and the Minister of Public Safety has ensured that he is put forward for urgent review.
The honourable member from Brampton South.
Mr. Speaker, it's a World Mental Health Day. This year's theme is time to prioritize mental health in the workplace. It reminds us that we need to prioritize mental health in all of our workplaces and communities right across the country. Everyone deserves to have access to mental health services that they need. Can the Minister of Mental Health and Addiction tell this House what our government is doing to extend access to mental health services across Canada? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Minister for Mental Health and Addictions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to my colleague for all of her advocacy on mental health. It's such an important issue to Canadians. Today is World Mental Health Day, a day to raise awareness and commit to breaking the stigma around mental health. Mental health is health, Mr. Speaker, and we're committed to expanding access to mental health services for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, we're taking action. While our government has solutions, the opposition only has slogans. From our government's work to creating a youth mental health fund to the 988 suicide helpline, we're taking a compassionate approach to make sure no one is left behind.
Hear, hear. The honourable member from Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, here are today's headlines. Israeli troops opened fire on UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. Hundreds of thousands of people are trapped in northern Gaza, ordered to flee with nowhere to go. Israel is planning to shut down UNRWA, and Canada's leader of the opposition says that Israel bombing a nuclear facility would be a gift to humanity. This is crazy. This is enough. Canada needs to do everything to de-escalate, everything to build peace. We need to sanction Netanyahu, we need to have an arms embargo, and we need to recognize Palestine.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, since October 7th, Canadians have been clear that they expect us to defend Israel's security and get the hostages released, ensure international rules are respected, do everything we can for civilians to be protected, and make sure that this conflict doesn't spread into a regional or international crisis. Too many innocent civilians, including children and women, have been killed in this war. The loss of innocent lives is something we have not heard Conservatives talk about in this House, and I appreciate the NDP bringing it forward. This should not be controversial, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Kitchener Centre.
Mr. Speaker, back in April, 6 nations of the Grand River had to close their community health centre because of worsening black mold, first detected over a year ago. And while Indigenous Services Canada has a responsibility to ensure 6 nations has a safe and accessible medical facility that meets their needs, the minister recently communicated to the community that they need to apply for funding and hope for the best. Will the minister take responsibility, commit to a follow-up meeting with 6 Nations Chief Hill, and expedite a new health centre?
The Honourable Minister for Indigenous Services and Fednor.
Mr. Speaker,
Speaker, I will always commit to working with First Nations leaders on their infrastructure priorities. As the member opposite knows, there is a $380 billion gap in infrastructure left after generation of neglected First Nations communities. But we have increased spending on First Nations infrastructure priorities by 1,800%, Mr. Speaker. And we're going to continue to do that work. We're going to continue to be there as partners, as communities build up the infrastructure they need for today and tomorrow.
And so brings to an end of a question period.
That's the end of question period, but we have this interesting segment that we're crossing over to right away. Hello, Kirk.
Howdy.
How are you doing? We can hear each other well?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, perfect.
A lot of topics were covered. No answers as usual. Why doesn't that surprise me?
On there, like they okay, there were in today's show, it would seem to me that there was a wide variety of display of how corrupt the ministers are. Like, I don't trust any single minister. Like, who is your least unfavorite? You know, most, or which minister do you like the more? Do you know what I mean? It's even hard to word the question because they're all so bad.
Gould, Khalid. There's a whole list, but there's two right off the top. Trudeau himself. And of course, Squeaky. Mr. Speaker.
It's tough to watch, man. Like, I watch Gould, my blood boils. It's like she's insulting me while she's lying because I know that she knows what she's saying is false, deceiving Canadians. Like, she fools my mom. Like, she's like, oh, she has such a soft voice. And it's like,
I can see how people would be fooled. You've got 15 minutes and you're dialing in to catch the news between your kids screaming and diapers and God knows what else. And you catch that snippet and then you get pulled away. Well, that's your truth. You've just heard that. It's mainstream, so it's got to be true. And look who's talking. So yeah, that sinks home. Now, the older folks have time. They can do stuff like this. They can watch and see what's happening and form their own opinion. But the average person is screaming busy. They don't have the opportunity.
That is what I think the disadvantage is that to see what, man, and I want to use much worse language, but to see what a troll Karina Gould is, it has to be taken in deep context because, like, as you just said, if you only see her for a couple of minutes, seems fine. I know when I started doing this, which it feels kind of funny because it was leading into Thanksgiving last year when I started, and that's when I started catching on. I'm like, oh, this bitch just lies. Like, and now she's gotten better at it. And I think more cold-hearted since she had her alien baby. Like,
well, I'm not going to get into that a whole bunch.
No, I don't mean to drag you there, but it's just that I think that most people, when they watch that, would know that they're being lied to by a person.
Not if you got it out of context and just caught a 10-minute blurb.
But if you see the question, you see the answer, then you see the next question, and then that answer, then the next. It does build up. I'm just telling you what I feel. And this week, Karina Gould's burning me worse than most of the other ministers in that.
I noticed yesterday.
Oh, yesterday again. Like I try to be pleasant on here, but like leave my sailor's mouth on the boat when I'm making the show. But I'm kind of at a loss because I don't understand how a person that does that thinks they can just walk around like in society and be safe. Because again, she's safe from me, but there's like people out there crazier than me for certain. We've got Sheila.
Sheila.
How are you?
Sheila, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And you guys?
Great.
Top shelf.
Good to have you
Good to
back,
see you
Sheila.
guys. Yes, thank you. It's good to be back. Yep. So, what a life we've been going through for the last week or so.
It's been a shit, you know what show. Sorry.
Yes. Oh no, don't be. I totally agree. I mean, my goodness. I know I said that, oh my goodness, this is happening all the time now. And Ehren, you laughed because, yeah, it only happened once, but I'm like, oh my God, with the burning of the flag and death to Canada, whatnot. Yeah, it really got me. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a stake to the heart. Those are fighting words in my day, and they still are, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh my God!
That's just never in the history that I can remember, and I'm 67. I've never seen that.
Oh my goodness gracious! I swore, and I was like, oh my goodness, because when I saw it, it was happening at the time that I was watching it, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is it for me being nice all the time, whatnot. I think now we really have to start getting it out there more so than we have been because it's getting crazy and nothing's being done. So, it's a crazy world out there.
It is a crazy world, and it's a funny thing because, like, I guess I just took it for granted being a white guy that
right.
Always like you were in the front row, but now I can't even criticize Hamas burning a flag on the stairs of a Capitol building.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be like, oh no, you're racist, and it's like, no, I'm trying to protect my country. I like the way that we have it set up here. We don't need to change it to get votes to keep a dirty government in power. Like.
That's right. That's right. No, it really got to me. I mean, I think I was just really overwhelmed with what had happened just because, let me turn the light on, just because of what's going on. And we don't know a lot of things, right? Like 11 MPs and all this other crap that's been going on. So I don't know. I didn't see too many people in the chat saying anything, but I guess it's because we're watching, question period too, right? Hold on, I'm trying to take this out, see if it works any better. There we go. Okay, so what I'm trying to say, guys, or do you think that's
there's a couple of bills upcoming that I'm very nervous about, like C-63 would really like that to get put down. 293, which is already to the Senate. If the Senate doesn't buck that, like that's going to be an issue.
It's scary because we also know that Trudeau put a lot of people in the Senate.
So many, and they call it independent Senate, right? Like it's so hypocritical and it's so transparent. But then, as soon as you say the story you're telling doesn't sound authentic,
that's right.
They attack you with racism, sexism, with some kind of ism, and I know that most of the people that watch this channel aren't like that. They're just people that want us to be in the Canada that was pre-Trudeau.
That's right. That's right. I still don't trust that guy. I still feel he's going to do something to us to stay in power.
I'm nervous about that too. Like 293 is C-293 is that, I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
Do you know anything about that one, Kirk? 293? Like, it's the preparation for the next pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it just came out that the next round of COVID shots have been approved and they're ready to go. I want to say Toronto. I'm not sure where I saw it.
I'm not
But
sure that I've seen it.
boy, talk about spin a roulette wheel. Not me.
Yeah, no.
Not again.
Have you guys heard, again, part of that bill, which is included, is a vegan diet?
Yes.
Like where they shut down livestock and so,
That's right.
like again, if it's a vegan diet, I guess it's not bugs.
No.
I was just going to say, eat the bugs.
Yeah,
If
but
you
no.
want meat, you're going to eat the bugs.
That's right. It's just ridiculous to me. I don't think that. I mean, I'm still on this part of the burning of our flag. I guess it's because we are real patriots here, but for them not to come out and condemn it or say anything about it, or I don't understand.
All those folks are potential votes, and you don't want to be ticking them off. That's why they have one minister say one thing to one group of people. They send out another minister to say something totally different to another group of people. And they're playing both ends against the middle. It's all about the vote.
Yeah, it is, but can't the people can't people see by now what the heck is going on? Like seriously, now I'm getting upset with people because I feel like they're just either ignoring what's going on or afraid to know what's going on. But hey, we can't all just sit back and say, okay, let somebody else fix it, because it's not going to happen.
Somebody in today's chat asked me, do you think someone's going to, or a group are going to go absolutely crazy? And I thought, well, geez, if something doesn't happen, the pressure cooker, pardon me, the pressure cooker that we have going on right now is unbelievable.
It is, yeah. It's not going to go well, I don't believe, for any of us right now. I believe that Trudeau is doing what he's doing. He's not even in the country, for goodness sakes.
He's in Laos.
Yeah. So I don't know. I just feel very nervous about what's going on. And I think it needs to get out there and be told more, or something has to happen. Like I say, people are just either scared or maybe they're just realizing, especially after seeing what they did with the flag and whatnot, and death to Canada.
It's very, very disheartening to see that. And then like, where were the police?
That's what hurts me. That's what hurts me the most.
At some point, at somewheres, there must be a law against burning Canada's flag like that.
Oh, there has to be. There has to be.
And if there's not, why aren't they talking about that? Like,
that's right.
To see
That's right.
That kind, again, and I don't have issues with immigrants in general, but immigrants that are being brought in to cause chaos and be allowed to do those things, I'm not down with that, man. Like
the immigrants that we're bringing in are not vetted, not like they used to be back in the day, even 20 years ago. They had to be well educated. They had to have a certain amount of money in their pockets to show that they could survive while they're here. Well, all that has been removed. We're not even getting security clearances for some of the countries they're coming from. But I don't know if you can trust those clearances or not. But we're not doing our due diligence as a country.
Not at all.
And it's all to grab votes. I'm convinced, 110%.
No, I'm with you, Kirk, there all the way. And I think Sheila agrees with us. Like, that
definitely.
It is a vote grab at the cost of our futures for their short-term future. Like our long-term future, their short-term. They're just trying to get one more, election won, another government to be in power.
That's it.
And they're sacrificing like hundreds of years of building this country. Like, and this country was still being built like 20 years ago, but now it feels like over the last 9 years or so, it seems like they're trying to dismantle it. Not even the last 9 years. I'm going to say the last 6. because I don't think that Trudeau went in corrupt. I think he became corrupt.
I think so too. Yep, I think so too. Got bought off, whatever.
Sometime around the time that he admired China's ability to get things done because of their dictatorship, that's when the snake started turning in his guts.
That's right. That's right. And you know what?
There's some kind of philosophical change that must happen in your brain to think. Because he looks different. Like, I know we all age, but he looks like...
Oh, yeah.
His eyes aren't white anymore.
No, you're right. He doesn't look as good as he used to. I never really thought he was a good-looking man, to be honest. But the thing is, all the women that were out there for him when he first came, it was like, are you kidding me? This guy did speak of China right then and there, right out of the gate. He said, I admire China. And it was like, to me, right then and there, I thought, uh-oh.
Well,
this
he might have communism in his blood.
Yeah.
People say that, right?
What are you saying, Ehren?
I'm done making a Castro joke.
No, I thought so.
Yeah. Anyhow, gang, we're going to wrap up. Great show today. It was fun. Yeah. Always interesting. Canadian federal politics. What are we going to do? Because we can't just
have to think about it, do something. Well, you know what I've been doing since I was away and heard all this? I've been writing and everybody. I mean, for everybody. I don't care who gets my phone calls, getting them. Nope. So I think we all have to do our part. I mean, other than getting out there and pow, you know what I mean? No. I think we do have to write our politicians, and I think we do have to stay right on top of them.
Well, I think that we need to take the high road, but know that the low road is often the way that it goes. That's the way that a lot of things travel. Anyhow,
plan for the worst. Plan for the worst and hope for the best. That's all you can do.
Keep
True
watching.
Enough, right?
Share it with people you care about. Again, I try to share it with my mom. Look at if you see it in context, as Kirk we were discussing, that Karina Gould, if you see her for 2 minutes, she's fine. Attractive young woman with a soft voice, new mom of an alien baby, and but she can fool people, and
we're all good at it.
We just gotta keep watching, letting people know, spreading the word.
That's right.
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe. It all helps.
Yeah,
sure
exactly.
Does. Anyhow, guys, we're going to wrap up right there. Don't mean to kick you out. I'm getting
Nope. Okay, take care, guys.
Thank you so much for all your help and support.
Okay. Bye,
Cheers,
guys.
everyone.
So, yeah, gang, we are going to wrap it up right there. We've maybe going to have an extra to do here. I think I do have an extra ready to go. Where is it? Here we go. We're out, gang.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Maybe there's a little grass growing right along here. Some happy little things.
I love you. You love me. We all own our own bodies, so marry who you want and do whatever drugs you choose. And when it's time, you can die with dignity by determining your own end-of-life plan.
Hi, Maria!
Hi, Officer Winkles!
How you doing today?
I don't have to answer that question.
That is correct!
I'm recording you!
Am I being detained?
Nope!
Which I can legally do because I'm in a public place!
Come back if you have a warrant!
Alrighty!
Know your rights!
Yay!
Okay, Gumshoes, Carmen Sandiego is in a country where socialism failed. That narrows it down to Venezuela, Cuba, the former Soviet Union, Moldova, Laos, Vietnam, Albania, Angola.
So we did some digging into your past.
Oh, the suspense is killing me!
But we still haven't solved the case, Holmes. Why is marijuana a Schedule I drug?
Elementary, my dear Watson. Nixon and racism.
What?
You okay? I don't know. Hey man, it's alright. It's alright. We've got qualified immunity. Qualified immunity, it's not for you, it's just for me. I shot your dog. I shot your wife. I get to go on with my life.
My favorite part is where the character says, I do not want green eggs and ham. And then Sam I Am says, that's fine. You don't have to eat them. That's your right. The end. It's a short book.
Here we see one of the last taxicab monopolies struggling for life. Competitors have...
All right, one last wrap up. I know that you can't wrap up this many times. I do.
Well, I see by the clock on a wall that it's time to bid you one and all goodbye. Goodbye. So long. So long. Farewell. Farewell. Adieu. Adieu. Be good. Stay well. Bye-bye. Keep warm. Relax. At ease. Take care. Stay loose. Adieu, mon vieux. À la prochaine. Goodbye till when we meet again.
Hey everyone, quiet down. There's a bulletin on TV.
And now for this news flash.
Can I say something to all the people who thought I was a loser, Chuck?
So you want to vote for a pretty boy Canadian named Justin. What could possibly go wrong?
I made a mistake, and I'm sincerely sorry.
Oh, hello. Do you have a warrant to be here?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
I know this place is where I am. No other place is better than. No matter where I go, I am proud to be Canadian. I am, you know I am. The world that works
the one we call Canadian. Canadians.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
That is it, gang. We are out. Thank you all for watching. Glad you got to see your name, Donna. It's fun. We try to have fun here. That's what we're doing. Laughing, learning about these wild Canadian federal politics. Times are tough, guys. I'm frustrated when I watch this stuff. Like Greg Fergus, like Karina Gould, same. Chrystia Freeland, Pierre Trudeau, like, come on. Stephen Guilbeault, Dominique LeBlanc, Yahara Sachs, Jenna Suds, Arif Irani, the list got Randy Bolsonaro. There are so many issues that our country faces. We're out, guys. Catch you next video. Thank you for watching this one. Back tomorrow. We're out.